So the world is an imperfect place, but New Zealand has discovered over the last, 30 years in particular, that we're not as rich or advanced as we thought we were. And as we continually lose our best, our brightest, our strong, our most aspirational, our ambitious overseas, the countries that reward our New Zealanders who have the skills and the talents to have international jobs, essentially, the health sector is one of those that has been devastated. We train GPs in this country, or we actually train medical students. We spend an awful lot of money on training an average medical student in this country. They graduate from Otago and Auckland universities, with clinical schools, I think, in Wellington and Auckland as well. The government is just about to now start a third medical school, GPs Association, which will increase the number of GPs in particular. But we're losing huge numbers of people. And this has meant that as a consequence of that, GPs are not able to plug the gaps in large areas of New Zealand. And as a consequence of that, physician associates who see patients but operate under supervision of doctors are working in our hospitals and in many of our private health practices in this country as well. In Gore just recently, 2 doctors have quit, and it's canary in the wood. Well, they say it's canary in the coal mine stuff. Amidst a furore in Gore over the use of unregulated physician associates, and it comes as medical associations across New Zealand rally against the use of physician associates, arguing that patient safety is at risk and they only add to the workload of already overstretched doctors and the workforce. To join us to talk about this and whether or not we are safe if we are seen by a physician associate instead of a doctor the next time we go to a hospital or a GP's practice is General Practitioners Chairman Buzz Burrell, and he joins us now. Buzz, you would have heard my introduction. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Michael, that was a lovely introduction. And look, thank you for your interest in this subject. I think the better we raise the profile, the more robust our conversations can be. And then hopefully the more light can be shone on the demise of general practice in this country. We should be able to become a squeaky wheel, which hopefully will attract some oil. So no, thank you for your interest in this.
Well, no, and I'm interested obviously because I'm a consumer of healthcare like everybody else in my family, and I want to make sure that if I go to a doctor or a hospital, I'm getting the best healthcare that they can. Buzz, let me just take you through this, and thank you for joining me again, as I said this afternoon.
Pleasure.
In the case of Gore, as you know, 2 doctors have quit amidst the furore that we've just talked about, and it's to do with physicians associates. Can you please explain to me what a physician associate is?
Look, my understanding of it is that they're highly trained assistants who, the word is appropriate, assist the doctors who they're working with. I believe they're trained overseas, and America has a training program, and it takes about 3 years for them to go from go to woe, which is impressive in its own right, and they are competent with their own field. To be honest, I've worked with physician assistants, and they are a useful adjunct, and that's the important part of it. I think what we have seen in health over at least the last 10 years is an encouragement of replacements as opposed to adjuncts, and there's a hell of a difference. I'll give you a stupid analogy, but why not? Because we have the time. If you can just imagine that stereotypic spoof movie where both pilots have eaten the fish and both pilots are incapacitated in a 777 plane, and the plane's going to crash until the hostess says, "Can anybody fly the plane?" And lo and behold, a plumber who's got a glider pilot's license says, "Well, I'll give it a go." So the plumber goes to the front of the plane, lands the plane successfully with the guidance from the air traffic control. Everybody's happy. Now that makes itself to a fun movie, and everybody praises the plumber. We don't then immediately say that's fantastic, we can now replace all airline pilots with plumbers with a pilot's license. We don't do that. But for some weird reason, exactly the same logic is being applied to health. And if anybody can stand up to the plate, if a doctor is away or absent or has left and a replacement hasn't been found, we somehow seem to, especially in general practice, seem to say it's okay for somebody who is not a doctor, who's not had a minimum of 10 years training before they can call themselves a GP. Somebody who's not qualified to do that, somehow in health, we can say that's fine. Anybody else willing to step up to the plate, especially if they've had some health training, they can replace the doctor. And that is just false logic, and that is disturbing.
So we're talking. Essentially, we're talking about a group of people, physician associates, who are different than prescribing nurses. Is that right?
Well, they are, and no disrespect to prescribing nurses, but prescribing nurses are similarly not doctors. It's going to sound like a really obvious statement, but somebody who's not a doctor is not a doctor, it is very, very interesting to talk to people who have been prescribing nurses, have been paramedics, have been insert whatever they used to do in a position of healthcare, which was not being a doctor. They retrained as a doctor, and every single one of them said, "Good God, I now realize I did not know what I did not know," and that is a very sort of scary platform to build a primary healthcare system, and. Part of the problem, if we look at the health politics, is that we're very, very hospital-centric, and somehow primary care, championed by doctors who used to be the first port of call, seems to be less and less important, and the statistics are showing that. And the repelling of trying to get non-doctors to take doctor roles is quite appropriate. Doctors are doctors, and non-doctors are non-doctors, and you can say that until you go blue in the face. You cannot replace a doctor with somebody who's not a doctor. Now, you can augment, you can assist, you can help, but you can't replace. And it's that replacement which is genuinely of concern.
No, I understand what you're saying, but let's use Gore as a good example of it. We don't have enough GPs in this country at the moment. Many are retiring, many are leaving, many aren't even entering the profession because it's seen as difficult and under-rewarded. If Gore doesn't have GPs, or anywhere else in a rural or provincial area, isn't a physician associate better than nothing?
Yes, that plumber with the glider pilot's license is better than nothing when the plane is about to crash. But to sort of say no, we can function a perfectly good primary healthcare system without doctors. We've got people who are not doctors who are claiming they can do the job just as well. No, they cannot do it just as well, and that's a really, really important thing.
I understand what you're saying, but we don't have. I mean, listen, in a perfect world, we'd have enough GPs. They'd be trained, remunerated, and we wouldn't be talking to each other at this point in time. But Buzz, we're talking because we don't. And there is no immediate, and there isn't and can't be an immediate solution on the horizon, even if everything was to work brilliantly and we were suddenly to recruit more people from the medical schools and train more people and they were to stay in this country. We're still years away from a solution. How do we deal with the interim problem?
Right. To be perfectly honest, I think we need to think slightly, not too far out of the square, but we need to ask the question correctly and then find the right solution. The problem is, as you correctly said, we don't have enough doctors. So why do we not have enough doctors? And as you correctly said, they're neither remunerated correctly or respected correctly. They're not resourced correctly, and they basically have been almost neglected by many, many governments. I'm not going to look at this government or the previous one, but probably the last 10 governments at least. So if we then turn that round and we did remunerate, if we recruited, went overseas and recruited, if we made the job more attractive, if we gave it more respect, if we resourced it correctly, then, as you rightly said, we wouldn't be speaking. But at the moment, we've got a very hospital-centric view to medicine. And if we are lacking in doctors, we seem to prioritize hospital services instead of GP services, as a result of which the hospitals are now doing an awful lot of the work which the GPs used to do, and that is incredible false economy. I can throw some statistics at you, but there was some research done in Australia not too long ago which said that if a person goes to a GP with a problem and it is sorted out by that GP, that costs the Australian government about $70. If that same patient goes to an emergency department, has the same treatment, the same sorting out, and then is discharged, that will cost the Australian government $700. And that is published research. That's not just
I understand the logic that would make that research correct. It's far better to be seen early and in a situation that's going to cost less money than the vast resources of a tertiary facility. I've got that. But going back to the question I want to ask you, Buzz, we don't have that happening tomorrow. You know what the budget is of this government for health. In fact, they're trying to cut as many administration jobs out as they can, supposedly to support the clinical front line. If we don't use prescribing nurses and physicians associates in the short term, doesn't it mean that places like Gore don't get health facilities at all?
Look, you're 100% right, and don't they know it? And doesn't the government know it? And so we've got cheaper, less well-trained alternatives who are stepping up to the plate. But what we are seeing is not as a stopgap, not as a thanks for filling in for the next few weeks until we can recruit overseas with a respectable salary package. Where what we're hearing, the rhetoric is, thanks for replacing them. We're never going back to how we used to be, and we now have a new health system with cheaper, less trained alternatives, and that's the new world order. Now that is incorrect, and that's not right. As I said before, if anybody is functioning on the intellectual level, I don't know what I don't know, but God, this is fun. That is really dangerous, and early diagnosis will be missed. And we will overburden the secondary sector. Just for what it's worth, if only 6% of people go to the emergency department instead of their GP, that will double the emergency department presentations. And we're starting to see that happen already. In other words, in years gone by, when people went to the GP and the GP sorted the problem out, they're going to the medical center where they see a non-doctor who says, gosh, I don't know what to do with this.